Did you say I'm person 25?
I think so.
Cool. Okay.
I've only almost not recorded one of them.
Really? Why is
Yeah,
that?
because I forgot to press record.
Oh,
There was only one I almost didn't record.
I thought there was an issue with the
No,
interviewee.
no.
Well, hello, stationary friends. I'm joined by Alexandra, and I'm going to ask her a bunch of stationery related questions. But first, let's get Alexandra to introduce herself.
Hi, my name's Alexandra. I run Alexandra's Art Insanity on Instagram and YouTube. It's a watercolor and fountain pen channel, and I am currently hosting a fountain pen series called Fountain Pen 20 Questions, where I sit down with a whole bunch of fountain pen creators and stationery shop owners in the community and ask them all the exact same 20 questions. And Frank has just done it on his channel, on my channel, and so I'm doing something on his channel.
Thanks, Alexandra. So let's talk about before we get into stationery, even though it's stationery related, a little bit about your artwork and what you do and what you do as an artist, I guess. Yeah.
So I currently mostly on my Instagram page am doing tiny trees. It's been a series for a couple months now, mostly just so that I can play around with my palette more because what I'm actually doing is stuff for local coffee shops that like isn't as interesting to post. It's like cards and stuff, but then I also do the book of names for a church, which also can't be posted. And so Tiny Trees was my way of coming up with content that I could post
Right.
while I was working on content that I couldn't post. And then I do Fountain Pen 20 questions over on YouTube and film ink videos and pen videos. And then once a week, do a live painting session where we paint an Instagram prompt for a challenge called Paint Your Style. And it's super fun.
Nice. Your Instagram and YouTube has a lot of watercolor on there. Is that your choice of medium for your artwork?
So yes, I water based. So watercolor or fountain pen ink is definitely the way I lean. I'm not a huge fan of acrylics. My mom is, but they're not how I like to work. And the very first brand that ever sent me product and I started working with was a handmade watercolor shop, which is how I ended up with all of these paints. So I'm lucky enough to have a really large palette that I can pick from. And so I like just getting to sort of sit down and play with paint. And that's a lot of what I do on my channel is just like sitting down and playing with paint and going, this is a really expensive set of paints. How can I recreate it? And I think those are some of the most fun videos. Last year, I did one where I tried to recreate a $300 palette that was going around on the internet for think it was less than $150. I tried to have it and I think I got it down to 100.
Wow, that's incredible. Do you find the watercolor based paint versus the fountain pen ink, is there any difference between the two? How do you find that?
So,
Which do you prefer?
so fountain pen ink isn't light fast normally, but also I most of my work is not if I'm doing commission work, it's I'm very selective of what I pick for my watercolor palette because lots of what's in my palette isn't light fast. There are very few watercolor pigments that are actually light fast to 100 plus years, which is what most artists look for
Hmm.
or most professional artists look for. And so I have a palette that's already not light fast. If I'm doing a commission, I'm selective. If I'm doing something like Christmas cards, I'm less selective. Nobody's storing a Christmas card on their mantle in direct sunlight for 100 years. So it's less of a big deal. But with inks, when you're working with them on paper, as soon as you put them down, they're staying where you put them.
Right.
Watercolors, once you put them down on the paper, in most cases, you can continue to work them. So I find that ink, I am very deliberate when I work with ink. There are pieces that I'll work with both fountain pen ink and watercolor. And then there are pieces that I'll, on occasion, just work with ink. But But then there are also times that I'll go, I don't feel like painting. There's a piece a couple weeks ago. The background was a blue gradient that then had a tree branch and flowers over top of it. And I went, if I do this background in paint, as soon as I put this other stuff over top, the branches are going to move the blue paint and the flowers are going to turn purple. So the easiest way to do that is to use fountain pen ink, because it'll go down, it'll stay where I put it, and you won't have as much color bleed through. So I actually combine them a lot in ways to sort of cheat pieces.
That's so cool.
Or cheat piece. Like, it's not cheating. Like, it's my own creative process.
There's an intended effect. Yeah.
Traditional watercolor artists would call it cheating, but I don't consider it cheating, because really they're both water-based mediums. These are, at the end of the day, fountain pen inks are pretty much liquid watercolor. And I'm just using them in a different way than they were intended.
Very neat. So I guess that probably lends itself to the next question. How did you get into stationery?
When I was 18, I was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, which was a super fun way to spend the summer. And then I was diagnosed with a brain injury shortly after that, and I had to learn how to write again, which is really what you want to be doing when you're 18 and 19. And because of that, I sort of, you have to learn how to explore things in a different way. And I was really lucky that I had a really good art therapist who made it engaging to sort of relearn everything. And who very quickly introduced the idea of spending more time painting, spending more time being creative, and working on the part of my brain that was still working really well. And that's how I got into watercolors. And then I got into handmade watercolors. And then I started to be sent handmade watercolors from brands. And then I got into fountain pens from handmade watercolors.
Right.
And it's just sort of evolved to something that's really, really fun.
Yeah.
Where I get to make videos 2 to 3 times a week on fountain pens and paint. And just, there's a really great community in the fountain pen world. And there's enough overlap between watercolors and fountain pens that the people that watch fountain pen videos tend to watch watercolor videos, and the people that watch watercolor videos, even if they're not fountain pen people, will watch fountain pen videos if you're a YouTuber that tends to make watercolor videos.
You're so right about that. I don't know what it is between that connection between watercoloring and fountain pens, but I was the same way. I started out with fountain pens, but watching channels like yours, watercolor intrigued me, and now I blend both. I'm nowhere near an artist like you, but it's fun to mess around with both worlds, and I think it's just fascinating how it's really encompassing at the end of the day.
I think it's because, like, we're basically putting liquid, like, at the end of the day, liquid watercolor is basically fountain pen
Right.
ink.
Yeah.
The only thing liquid watercolor is missing is the mold stabilizer that most fountain pen ink has.
Right. Okay.
Like, that's pretty much the only difference between the two. We're already playing with liquid watercolor every time we ink up a fountain pen. We just don't realize it. And yet most of us have huge collections of colors because we really enjoy playing with the colors because they're pretty.
It's a fair point. It's a fair point. The next question, and I can tell it, I'm going to have to constrain the question because I can see the stationery just behind you here on the screen. What is in your everyday carry stationery toolkit?
That's actually a pretty small collection of things. So, Passport Travelers currently only has 1 insert in it. Normally has 1 to 4, depending on what's going on. And so right now it's just got like my scrap random notes insert in it because I need to open more inserts. It's full. And then pen-wise, my everyday carry is 4 pens, all from the same brand. We have a Kaweco Sport highlighter.
Nice.
Which is actually the highlighter nib with highlighter ink in it, which is a pen that I didn't think I'd use as much as I do. and is great.
Interesting.
Like there's always some note that you want to star and you wish you'd actually like be able to remember where it is. Use this so much. It's great. Kaweco Sport. Double broad.
Ooh.
In Bordeaux. And it has Ferris wheel press plated gold tresses in it, which is their gold super sparkly ink. Because you always need a pen for signing birthday cards or writing on envelopes.
Fair enough.
You never know when you're going to be out and about and realize you need to go to Shoppers and buy a birthday card. And then the two pens that I use in my travelers, in my planner, like just writing notes. And what I really like is both of these work well on Post-it notes, is Kaweco Sport Mellow Blue medium nib with Ferris wheel press Dusk and Bloom in it. And then a Kaweco Sport, the special edition lavender, with a broad nib that has Dominant Industries Evening in it.
Ooh, nice ink.
But I am very much like it's 4 pens, but like everything's small. I don't carry that much. Like there's a lot that lives on my desk. If I'm going somewhere that I know there's a chance of going to a pen shop or an art store, I will throw my Cola ring dippers in.
Right.
So I know what inks I have, or I know what the ink colors I have are, like what the colors look like, just for practicality. Other than that, though, like I don't carry that much stationery wise. I don't see the point.
In terms of fountain pens, because you started talking about fountain pens
Yep.
there, what's your favorite fountain pen?
My favorite pen currently. Oh no. Like it changes depending on what I've got inked up. Like if I had to choose one that's consistently my favorite every time I use it, it's the Kaweco Sport with Dusk and Bloom in it.
Mm-hmm.
It's when a pen has been inked up constantly since October, it is the smoothest nib I own on any pen. It is a lovely pen. But then I've also got things like a vintage Waterman that I've got inked up, which is one of my favorite pens. I just can't, like, it's not a pen you can travel with.
Oh, very beautiful.
It's a pen that lives on your desk and like it's inked up. It's got a flex nib. I love to use it, but I can't travel with it.
Right.
And there are 2 pens in the mail on their way to me. One of them is probably going to be my favorite pen ever, but until it's on my desk, it's not real. Like I'm one of those people that until it's sitting on my desk, it doesn't matter that I've got a tracking number for it. Until it is sitting on my desk,
Doesn't exist.
it doesn't exist. But is it going to be my favorite pen when it shows up? Yes. And I know that.
So you like to cycle through your pens is basically what I'm hearing.
There are some pens that I cycle through. Like those Kawecos are always inked up. The Waterman probably spends a good half the year inked up. Because like I don't always want a vintage flex nib inked up, but it's also a pain to clean. And it's like, is it more annoying to clean this pen or is it more annoying to have it inked up all the time? But then there are pens that every 6 to 8 weeks I do an inked video. And then in that video, I'll choose between 4 and 5 new pens that I'm adding into my rotation for the month. Those pens and those ink colors just sort of depend on what I'm feeling for the month. So for July, when we're filming this, my color currently is gray. So every ink I've chosen for the month is a gray. And I'm very much enjoying it. I love writing with gray inks because they've got a whole bunch of, like, you've got a whole spectrum of colors and they're super fun to use.
I suspect that's going to answer my next question, which was favorite fountain pen ink. But it, like you're indicating, it changes and you've got certain themes and seasonals that you tend to fluctuate through.
Favorite fountain pen ink? There are only 2 options.
Oh, look at this. Okay, never mind. I take it back.
Dusk and Bloom, Madame Mulberry.
Both from Ferris Wheel Press.
Both from Ferris Wheel Press. Muted, dusty colors.
Mm.
I'm a muted, dusty fountain pen color person. One is a blue, one is a pink. They are colors I love enough. I have a 38 ml bottle of this, and I own an 85.
Wow.
I own two 38 ml bottles of this. There's no other ink in my collection that I own two bottles of. I don't know that there will ever be other inks in my collection that I will own two bottles of before I run out of the original bottles. But I absolutely adore these colors. And I'm not currently daily driving my Parker 45, my Parker 21 in red, but this is the only ink that goes in that pen because, again, that pen is a pain to clean. So I have two bottles of this ink, and I know I adore this ink. This ink has been in that Kaweco Sport for almost 8.5 months.
Mm-hmm.
And if you daily drive an ink for 8.5 months, it's probably a sign
you're keeping it.
You're keeping it, and you'll be sad if the ink is discontinued.
Right.
That's my philosophy. If I would actually be sad to have to change the ink that's in that pen, then maybe it's a sign I should own a second bottle of the ink. Otherwise, I don't see the point in owning two bottles of something. I've lied. There's a third bottle I own a second ink of.
Oh, yeah? Oh, which one's that?
Plated Gold Tresses, which is the ink that I'm daily driving in the Bordeaux pen because I am halfway through this bottle already. And I quite like it as a gold. And it appeared on a couple people's lists as their favorite gold, which was also the closest to the Pelican gold.
Right.
And I knew that I was never going to be able to get the Pelican gold. And so I got that gold instead. I got another bottle of it.
Going back to your everyday carry for your stationery toolkit, I'm surprised, and maybe you do. Do you have a watercolor kit that you keep on you as well?
No. So I don't really paint on the go. I'm not a huge urban painting person.
Okay.
I wish I was. It's something I wish I was better at. It's something I hope to get better at. I plan to, I'm already planning the paints I'm taking to Chicago in a couple weeks. I'm planning, because we're also then going on vacation afterwards. So I'm sort of planning ahead what paints I'm taking. Mm-hmm. I do have this, which I filmed a video on. I don't know if the video has come out yet, but it is a very tiny watercolor palette.
Yeah.
Which I love. It is a color selection I absolutely love. I really planned it out. But there are added steps, like it's having to have brushes, having to have water. I bought travel brushes thinking I would love to paint on the go. And in reality, my travel brushes are my most used paint brushes. But they've never left my desk. I love my travel brushes. My travel brushes are Tintoretto Synthetic Squirrel. They're great. But I've never painted with them on the go.
What is one thing that you wish you had in your stationery toolkit?
One of the traveler's clips for the notebooks to hold them flat.
Oh, interesting. Like one of the, like something like this guy here?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I want one of those. Or like Estabrook has a version that just like slides on that's a pen nib.
Right. Yeah.
But there are definitely times that I go, oh, this is really annoying. I need you to stay flat. Other than that, though, like I'm pretty happy. I would like a sample of that crazy gold ink that Pelican did a few years back.
Right.
For the most part, though, I'm fairly happy. Like there are definitely Grail pens that I'd like to try one day. But especially with the brain injury, like I find the hyperfixation on something can be really strong. Mm-hmm. But there's almost never the disappointment if I try an item at a pen show and the item does not live up to my expectations. There is not the same level of disappointment like friends describe when they've hyped up an item.
Right.
I really wanted to hold a Visconti Homo sapien. I didn't think I wanted one. I just wanted to know what they felt like. I desperately wanted it to be a weird texture in my hand. And I was so disappointed that it was not, like, it looks like it should be textured and it's not. And I understand why it's not textured. It would be so uncomfortable to hold. But like the disappointment at the fact that it was not textured. And then like a couple hours later, I saw the coolest Visconti ever, which was a Visconti Homo sapien demonstrator.
Right.
And I was like, that's the one I want someday. I don't want that one. But it was like, it's easy to sort of move on to the next thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would like to try a sailor, but I don't know that I'd actually like a sailor.
Yeah.
Other than that, though, like
you're pretty content.
I'm pretty content. Like most of what I do these days is playing with inks.
Right.
And I'm quite happy when somebody in the Canadian fountain pen group goes, "Hey, does somebody want to trade inks?" And I get to go, "Yeah," because honestly, like some days I don't even say what inks I want back in the trade. I like just the mystery of potentially getting to try out something, something that I wouldn't have considered trying.
Right.
And that might be my new favorite. Like that's appealing.
The other thing that I'm quite admiring is the background of your desk here. I love stationary desks and how people use their desks. This is something, is this something that you put a lot of thought into? Is this the desk you just had?
This was the desk in my grandfather's office. So we're actually about 15 feet from where the desk I paint at is, in what used to be my grandfather's office. And when he died in March, the office was sort of left. Like we were still using it because there was still paperwork in it. And then when this series became a virtual 20 questions thing, we realized that I needed a background. And so that was sort of our push to finally go through the office. And so I am now working in his office.
Nice. Did you customize any of the shelves and the desks there? No, that's all exactly how it was. Yeah.
No, including the fact we've replaced the light, but he did have under desk lighting in his desk.
There you go.
And so no, the shelves are all at the same height as they were. We just put new stuff in them.
Right. It's a very beautiful desk.
It is.
Sorry, I cut you off there. Keep going.
It is solid.
Solid, like a solid wood?
Oh yeah.
Do you know what kind of wood it is? Just out of curiosity?
I have no idea.
The desk behind me here, also in the family from grandparents, my wife's grandfather, beautiful desk, and it's solid pine wood, and it's not like the modern pine wood. It's like 60 years old, 70 years old now, and that pine is just like it's very, very beefy and heavy.
I have a feeling this desk's been in the same position since the early 70s.
Wow, that is so cool. If there's one piece of advice for those who, there seems to be a lot of gravitation, like many things, towards moving away from digital to analog lifestyles, and stationery being kind of one of those things or part of that. Is there advice you would give to people who are looking to get more into stationery or analog types of things in general?
Stay off Reddit. It is, fountain pen Reddit can be one of the best places. I love using it, but it can also be one of the worst places. Like it can be an absolutely fantastic resource, but it can also be a whole bunch of people arguing. And I think that if you're trying to figure out what's for you, it's not the place to be. People called the Traveler's Notebooks overhyped for a very long time. And so I pretty much didn't get one until I could not fit a different type of notebook in my purse. Was going to an event that I knew I needed something that had refills and wanted the ability to like pull out notebooks as they were full. And realized that the Traveler system was really the best system on the market for that. And in the end, wished I had had one for significantly longer than I've had one. And so I think it's also about just finding what works for you, because the planner I use day to day is not marketed as being a fountain pen planner, but is far more reasonably priced than most planners that are marketed as being fountain pen planners, is far better laid out, at least for me, than fountain pen planners. And it's been a really good system the past year. And I have not found an ink that does not work on it. Yes, you may not get the crazy sheening, but if you're using a planner for something practical to keep you organized during the week, do you really need crazy sheening in a planner day to day? So I think it's about just finding what works for you. And that's really important. Like there are people that hate writing with shimmer inks. And I have one of my daily pens inked up with shimmer inks.
Yeah, totally.
And yeah, it's just about finding what works for you.
It's great advice. Thank you. One of the things that fascinates me about stationery is being a subculture in itself. It encompasses so many other subcultures. So I'm curious what kind of hobbies you have on the side that overlaps very heavily with stationery.
I don't think I actually have any. Like I don't have a bake. I ride dressage. I garden, and that's.
Do you keep journals for each of those activities, like writing and baking? No, you keep them very separate, do you?
I keep notes for baking, but the notes I keep are all math, because lots of the recipes I use for baking weren't created to be dairy free, weren't created, right. And so it's like what changes did I make, and then how did those changes work? What would we change next time?
Right.
But for the most part, like I don't keep a consistent journal.
Mm-hmm.
I did for a long time. I started bullet journaling when I was 16. I kept one all through the 17, 18. Up until I was diagnosed, I was with cancer, I kept one. I started keeping one again a few months after cancer while I was relearning how to write. I did one in 19 that I kept for about half the year when I was 19. And same with 20 and 21 and 22. Like I couldn't consistently keep one at that point anymore.
Yeah.
I would get about halfway through the year and then I'd get burnt out. And so I just stopped, for lack of a better term. I have a lot of journals that like end somewhere between, I think last year was the worst. Last year I got burnt out in April. And so my bullet journal ends in April. I'm done.
Yeah. It's interesting, the other activities or hobbies that you've listed there. They're still very much analog based, writing and baking. These are activities that might not overlap with stationery necessarily, but are somewhat tangentially related with just grounding oneself. And
yeah, I would say like they are really analog. Like, and I edit on the back deck. And I can't read. Like a traumatic brain injury, I can't read. And so I spend a lot of time listening to audiobooks. I spend a lot of time listening to old Broadway cast albums. But I don't, and I spend a lot of time listening to TV shows, but not actually watching TV shows.
Interesting.
Like it's not, I need the background noise, but I don't actually, like my brain can't always handle like all the movement on the screen. But I need something going on, because where most people's brains like have an internal dialogue.
Yeah.
Mine doesn't most of the time anymore. And so otherwise I'm bored and frustrated. And so I just have background noise on all the time.
Right. Well, Alexandra, I want to thank you so much for your time and for this interview. If people want to find out more about you and the channel, where can they go? And I'll put the link in the description below as well.
I am on Instagram and YouTube, both under Alexandra's Art Insanity, and yeah, I'm on Instagram and YouTube. Same channel name, both places.
Perfect.
I'm easy to find.
I'll put the links in the description below. Thank you again. I enjoyed this chat, and I hope we get to chat again in the future.
Right, this was lovely. Thanks for having me.